Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 14th, 2025 meeting of the Abington Board of School Directors. I note the attendance of all board members. Mr. Allen is joining us remotely today. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Abington Board of School Directors has convened this evening's meeting at the Administration Building, and the public is welcome. This meeting is being broadcast live on the Abington School District YouTube channel. This meeting is also being recorded and will be accessible on the district's website and cable channel no later than Friday, January 17th, 2025, to allow those members of the public who cannot participate to view the meeting at a later time. Comments from citizens will be conducted in person and by phone. Information regarding participating remotely in public comment will be displayed on the screen at the time of public comment. The board thanks the public in advance for its cooperation. This is a place where we hold dignity in high regard, and everyone's voice is respected and welcomed in this space. Dr. Fetcher, do we have any additional announcements or agenda items?
None at this time.
Are there any comments from my fellow board members? Mr. Allen?
Nothing, thank you.
Mrs. Brown?
Happy New Year, everyone.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Good evening, all.
Mr. Mohammed?
Happy New Year.
Ms. Spalding?
Nothing at this time.
Ms. Hartman?
Happy New Year. Welcome back.
Welcome, everyone.
Ms. Fazy?
Welcome, everyone.
Okay, welcome back and Happy New Year, everyone. Dr. Fetcher, can you please proceed with our student council representatives?
Thank you, Dr. Mallory. First, I would like Mary Carter from Abington Senior High School to come forward. Or this information.
I'm not Mary Carter, but I still have something to say. Good evening, Dr. Mallory, Dr. Fetcher, and the members of the Board of School Directors. My name is Bryson Edmonds, and I am the Student Council President of Abington Senior High School. We've kicked off the new year in full swing with athletics, clubs, and other activities at the high school. The chess team played at the Ben Franklin Chess Championship, and Sophie Abora, 11th grade, and Ching Chen, 10th grade, both won scholarships for the outstanding performance. Kenneth Lawyer, a current student enrolled in the Protective Services program at Eastern, was selected as Eastern Student of the Month for January 2025. The athletic department is excited to announce that their Excellence in Athletics recognition for the month of December will go to Maya Johnson. Maya has shown outstanding performance, dedication, and achievements on our girls basketball team. On December 20th, Maya became the all-time assist leader in the Abington girls basketball when she dished out her 341st assist. On Saturday, January 4th, at Central Bucks South High School, the Abington cheerleading team qualified for the PIAA State Championship competition in Reading, PA. That will take place on January 30th and 31st. Congratulations to both the girls and boys indoor track teams. They have already competed at Lehigh University and Haverford College, with several students earning medals in both individual events and group relays. The following Abington Senior High School scholars have been recognized by the Suburban One All-League for their achievements on the golf team. Maxwell Hayes, All-League First Team, William Goldstein, All-League Second Team, and Eli Greeley for All-League Second Team. Noah Hillersier and Maeve Hong have been selected by the National Merit Scholarship Corporation as semifinalists in the 2025 competition for Merit Scholarship Awards. The nationwide pool of semifinalists, representing less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors, includes the highest scoring entrants in each state. This is yet another example of the senior high scholars rising above and beyond and displaying their academic prowess within our school. Tristan Picardo, Jessica Chaco, Jolene Fry, Mina Fuji, Lucas Hollenstein, Elliot Kim, Eugene Lim, Arvin Nefsha, Jeremy Moore, Miles Rowland, Gregory Rodnitsky, and Amy Wang represented the top 5% of a national group of approximately 1.6 million scholars who entered the 2025 National Merit Scholarship Program competition by taking the 2024 PSAT MS SQT. These commended scholars have demonstrated outstanding academic performance, academic potential by their high performance in these programs and exceptional scores. Kamzi Akuta, Tina Barnes, Melvin Kamaging, Sienna Kittles, Jeffrey Kunkel, Samuel Lard, and Samuel Thompson Wise. I butchered those names, I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. Or 7 among 5,000 students named as scholars in the 2025 National African American Recognition Program. These scholars met or exceeded the rigorous academic and testing requirements established by the College Board for entry into this prestigious program. Vincent Foley, Michaela Hesden, Jeffrey Kunkel, Caitlin Noonan, Amy Wang, and Zoe Young are recognized in the inaugural First Generation National Recognition Award Program presented by the College Board. Eligible students qualify based on strong academic performance reflected by PSAT, NMSQT, or PSAT 10 scores within the top 10% of test takers for each award program in each state of a score of 3 or higher on 2 or more AP exams by the end of 10th grade. Jonah Brown, Walter Flores III, Paula Jarmel, and Manuel Zambrano were 4 of approximately 5,000 scholars named in the 2025 National Hispanic Recognition Program, where scholars met or exceeded the rigorous academic and testing requirements established by the College Board for entry into this prestigious program. All the students I've named above are representing the academic prowess at Abington at the highest level. Can we please give them a round of applause? Senior Olivia Capps was recognized as the Suburban One League Univest Athlete of the Week. She's a 3-season athlete as an integral member of the soccer team, swim team, and lacrosse team. She does this while still maintaining excellent grades and demonstrating the character of an outstanding student. The following scholars have advanced as finalists in the second phase of the student member of the board selection and will be appearing on the election ballot. Suhan Kumar, Selena Wu, and Eric Zhang. All election information will be highlighted on our school TV show, The Bing, shown in advisory. As you can see, business is in full swing as we enter a new year at the high school. A new year comes with a whole set of new goals to achieve. It is also a time of reflection to look back on the previous year and see what went well and what didn't. Either way, we should all be going to the new year trying to make some kind of change in our lives for the better. For that is the only way we can truly measure our success year to year. Thank you and have a nice evening. Respectfully submitted, Bryson Edmonds.
Thank you, Bryson. A lot going on, and we do look forward to honoring our scholars at a future board meeting. So you'll have the opportunity to, at that time, have our scholars in front of us for you to be able to honor as well.
Thank you, Bryson, for that excellent report, and congratulations to all our scholars and our athletes. I know that I'm particularly looking forward to seating our student representative. So when the results of the election are ready, I assume Dr. Fetcher will let us know.
I will let you know as soon as I know.
Thank you.
At this time, from Abington Middle School, Lillian Orkin, if you could please come forward.
Good evening, Dr. Maui, Dr. Fetcher, and members of the Board of School Directors. I am Lillian Orkin, and I am on the Executive Board of Student Council for Abington Middle School. The GSA had a holiday party at the end of December, complete with a rainbow elephant gift exchange, our take on the traditional white elephant. Members received gifts like homemade books, stuffed animals, and Christmas ornaments. We are looking forward to our January meetings, where we will brainstorm ways to make the school more inclusive. The 7th grade girls basketball team won first place in our league championship game. The 8th grade girls basketball team won first place in the consolation bracket for the league. Congratulations to all of the team members and coaches who participated this season. We are proudly displaying the trophies in our athletics display case on the first floor. American Sign Language Club learned how to describe their families and participated in a spirited game of Family Guess Who. Our club has started up for the new year. There are 3 different project-focused rooms: sculpture, ceramics, and design. The students are all very excited to get going on their projects. New this year, the design room will be creating signage for AMS, and we can't wait to see student designs hanging up around the building. The Reading Olympics is in full swing, reading books for the competition that will take place here at Abington Middle School in April. We have 5 teams that will compete with other schools in Montgomery County. The School Beautification Club has some exciting ideas this year. These ideas include updated pictures and creating murals to help AMS look even more beautiful. The Going Green Club students enjoyed their annual movie meeting where they watched the original Dr. Seuss's The Lorax and had snacks. After they had a Lorax trivia contest where the winners received prizes, the AMS chorus caroled for a cause on December 19th and raised funds for the Everywhere Project, showing their support for 8th grade choir member Amelia Fletcher. Amelia volunteers with the Everywhere Project and provides toys and books for children whose parents are seeking assistance. The AMS M4 and the ASHS M3 bands performed at the Philadelphia Flyers game on January 11th. Over 50 musicians rocked out for large crowds on the concourse of the Philadelphia Hockey Center. Philadelphia singer Lauren Hart, who performs the anthems at all the home Flyers games, was one of the fans in the audience enjoying the great sounds of the Abington Martyr music bands. Character Cafe held their monthly meeting the Thursday before winter break. We talked about what books we like to read over the break when we made crafts out of old recycled books. Vibe and Imagine were once again joint leaders at the senior high school for planning the AHS Cultural Fair, which will take place on February 28th, 2025. Middle school leaders have been invited to the event by Dr. Wormley and will look forward to this experience.
Thank you very much, Lillian. A lot going on there. Good job.
Thank you, Lillian.
Great job summarizing all that's going on. We appreciate your coming out to our meeting and informing us.
Dr. Fetcher, would you proceed with our board orientations this evening, please?
Yes, Dr. Mowry. First, at this time, I'd like Dr. Stephanie Viola, Assistant Director of Elementary Teaching and Learning, Miss Janine Sack, Supervisor of Literacy, Dr. Lindsay Morgan, Principal at Rydell Elementary School, Miss Amita Abraham, Reading Specialist at Overlook Elementary School, and Miss Amanda Wagner, Grade 3 Teacher at Roslyn Elementary, to present the recommended English Language Arts Instructional Materials adoption for the 2025-2026 school year.
Good evening, Dr. Mowry, Dr. Fetcher, and members of the Board of School Directors. This evening, we will be sharing a recommendation for the adoption of new instructional materials for teaching English language arts in grades kindergarten through 5. As you are aware, the Board of School Directors must approve all instructional materials that will be used in classrooms as a requirement of Pennsylvania School Code. To prepare for this recommendation, a superintendent's committee of stakeholders was tasked with review and evaluation of programs that would be effective for use in Abington's elementary classrooms. We will share the process that the committee underwent this evening. Our current program for English language arts is Journeys. Journeys is being discontinued and will not be available for renewal in 2025. Therefore, the committee was charged with identifying materials and resources that would meet our district's needs. The committee sought to ensure our selection would align with PA academic and core standards for English language arts and the PA state literacy plan. Additionally, the committee sought to ensure that programs we reviewed were grounded in the science of reading research. Our committee considered numerous factors while evaluating potential programs. including standards alignment, current research of instructional practices and methodology, and the diverse learning needs of our student population. The committee also considered a plan for professional development and resources for parents and guardians.
A diverse group of district stakeholders participated in the Superintendent's Committee. The committee had 53 members. The Superintendent's Committee completed its work between fall 2023 and fall 2024. Committee members spent numerous hours dedicated to the review of appropriate programs, and all K-5 teachers had the opportunity to look at the materials during a recent professional development day. The recommendation for the K-5 English Language Arts program is Amplify Core Knowledge Language Arts, 3rd edition, 2026. Amplify CKLA has a pedagogical approach of explicit, systematic foundational skills, instruction, and a proven knowledge building sequence. Elements valued by our stakeholders include its level of rigor, engaging in high-interest texts, and comprehensive approach to promising student achievement.
Amplify CKLA is designed to align with the science of reading principles, providing systematic evidence-based instruction to support literacy development. There are several key strengths across evaluations, such as the Reading League, Ed Reports, and the International Literacy Association, that are of note. The program has foundational skills mastery as a component. There is an abundant evidence of a systematic explicit instruction with a clear scope and sequence for phonics, phonemic awareness, and fluency. The program is a knowledge-rich curriculum that prioritizes the development of content knowledge and comprehension. And the program has explicit writing instruction that integrates writing tasks that build on knowledge gained from reading lessons. Science of reading is the research-based understanding of reading development, instruction, and best practices, and draws from education, psychology, linguistics, and neuroscience. The key findings from the science of reading research include: instruction works best when components are integrated, not isolated. Effective reading instruction is rooted in evidence and integrates decoding, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Teacher preparation and professional development are essential for improving literacy outcomes, and teachers with a strong foundational knowledge improve student outcomes. And frameworks like the simple view of reading, as depicted here on this slide, help educators focus on target areas where students need the most support. Proficient reading is the result of skill development in the areas of decoding and language comprehension.
The 3rd edition of Amplify CKLA introduces several notable updates that set it apart from previous editions. One key enhancement is the inclusion of a skills component in 3rd grade. As a current 3rd grade teacher, I've observed that many students still face gaps in foundational skills. This edition will be instrumental in helping students transition from learning to read to reading to learn by strengthening their decoding and reading fluency, giving students the skills needed to read grade level text. Other highlights that impressed the committee include an increased focus on writing instruction based on the science of writing, a richer representation of diverse perspectives and authentic texts, and the inclusion of poetry units for grades 2 through 5. Amplify CKLA is designed to meet the needs of all learners, including those with varying reading levels and language skills. CKLA places a strong emphasis on building foundational literacy skills for all students, particularly in the early grades. This focus helps close achievement gaps by ensuring that students develop the critical skills they need. In addition, while students are learning to read, the knowledge component allows students access to complex texts about a variety of topics, such as Greek myths in grade 2 and the classification of animals in grade 3. The knowledge component levels the playing field for all students by building background knowledge of the world. The knowledge component in Amplify CKLA stands out for its intentional design for building relevant background knowledge.
In addition to our committee members, elementary teachers were given the opportunity to explore the program and provide feedback. Teachers appreciated the knowledge-building aspect of the program, recognizing that our students come to us with varying backgrounds and experiences. Offering all students exposure to a wide range of topics will increase engagement and promote knowledge equity. The program's structured literacy approach, with an emphasis on phonics instruction, will be a critical building block for our students' future reading success. A group of us had the privilege of visiting a neighboring district during their first year of implementation. Teachers at the school shared that students were making significant gains in decoding, comprehension, and writing. Many of the key features of CKLA have already been mentioned. However, I would like to emphasize that the program has two instructional strands: a skills strand that focuses on phonemic awareness, phonics, decoding, and writing, and a knowledge strand that supports students' listening comprehension, vocabulary, and writing growth. The program comes with resources for both teachers and families in digital and print formats. In addition, M-Class will be a valuable tool to measure and monitor students' literacy skills, provide teachers with detailed information on students' strengths and needs, and also support teachers with suggestions for instructional practices to reinforce those skills. In conclusion, Amplify CKLA is a research-backed, structured literacy program promising positive shifts in our instructional practices and literacy success for our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can answer any questions that you may have.
My fellow board members? Mrs. Brown?
Yes. Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm very excited about the potential adoption of this. I have two questions. One, I like the learning to read, leading to reading to learn. I absolutely love that. I wrote it down. I'll probably use it in the future. But I will also say reading for enjoyment. And I see that through the choice selection. So I'm very happy that that's there. My question is, how will we measure its success, especially as it pertains to the achievement gap? My second question is, the time allotted for reading per day, does it match the suggestion of the program, what they suggest? And my third question, you mentioned there's a digital and print format. Is that up to the teacher discretion? I know we do a great job with planning together and teachers discussing best practices. Do we know if we're leaning more towards the digital versus the print format?
So your first question?
Yes, ma'am.
The assessment available through this program is varied. So there are lots of opportunities for our teachers to assign students formative assessment, unit assessments. M-Class is DIBEL's 8th edition. So there's opportunity for us to do progress monitoring. So through the varied assessment pieces, our teachers will be able to track student progress and will be able to evaluate program effectiveness. Obviously, we set goals at the beginning of each year, our schools and our teachers, and mid-year review and year-end review, and we will do that with this program as well.
Okay.
The second question was related to
Time allotment, if it matches the
Yes,
suggestion.
Yes. Our daily minutes, our daily instructional minutes at elementary do meet the recommended time for this program.
Okay, thank you.
And the final question about print and digital, at the elementary grades, we really do focus for the most part on using print resources. The digital pieces of the program are valuable for teachers for display purposes. There's also some online programming that the students will be able to engage in. Typically, we use the digital pieces for opportunities for center work and or independent work and during WIN time. But I would say during the core pieces of a literacy block at elementary, the students are engaged in print.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'd like to say I appreciate the mental model aspect as a way for educators to be able to catch and possibly control childhood misconceptions related to experiences in general, but particularly academia. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just a comment regarding the addition of the grade 3 foundational skills. That seems to be above and beyond what is offered at Journeys, and also should help facilitate one of the key takeaways I heard, which is strategies to support individualized instruction to help address our different tier levels of students that we have, especially early in elementary. So I'm excited to see how that goes for the students.
That was a really strong selling point for the third edition of this.
Great.
Anyone else? I appreciate the thoroughness of the process you all went through to select a curriculum that's really going to help our students reading. I personally appreciate the emphasis on print resources, especially for younger kids, because it really helps with retention. And wanted to applaud you all for the inclusion of poetry in the reading. So, well done. Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shall we proceed to our next orientation?
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Mowry. I now ask Ms. Laura Nama, Assistant Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning, to review the proposed academic program changes for the 2025-26 school year. Ms. Nama.
Good evening, Dr. Mowry, Dr. Fetcher, and the Board of School Directors. Tonight I'm sharing proposed changes to the Abington Senior High School Program of Studies for 2025-2026. For this presentation, I'm just going to include some brief background information, and then I'll dive into details about those recommendations. Each year, Abington School District updates our academic program of study. We propose additions, modifications, and/or deletions. Recent recommendations that you may remember are: we created the college and career pathways, we expanded our dual enrollment partners over the last few years, and we also developed the foundational reading courses. Those are one of the more recent ones we did. For 2025-26, Abington Middle School is proposing no changes to their program, and the senior high school has 12 changes that I'll review. So the first set of changes are in the business department. We're recommending replacing our Foundations of Innovation 2 course, which is currently required of all 10th grade students, with a personal finance course. This new course, Personal Finance, would be designed to meet new financial literacy requirements that are outlined in Act 35 of 2023. So this is actually a state requirement. This recommendation would be accomplished through 3 adjustments to our program of studies: the addition of Personal Finance, the deletion of Foundations of Innovation 2, and then the modification of the title of Foundations of Innovation 1 to just simply Foundations of Innovations. Next, in Family and Consumer Science, the high school is recommending 3 modifications, and these modifications are just in the course title, so the courses themselves are staying the same. And the goal here is just to provide greater clarity for our families during the course selection process. So Apparel 1, we are recommending become Fashion and Textiles. That course does focus on choosing textiles and just introductory sewing. Apparel 2 would become Apparel Construction and Fundamentals, as they dive deeper into the construction of more complicated works. And Apparel 3 would become Fashion Design and Merchandising, as they do at that point start to discuss more about the design industry. The curriculum and the sequential nature of the courses would remain the same. The Health and Physical Education Department is also recommending a course change title. Our Introduction to Exercise Science course, we would like to rename Body Systems and Applied Anatomy 1, and this modification is to better distinguish our program from programs that are offered at the Eastern Center for Arts and Technology. They have an exercise science program there. Also, this class is very popular at Abington, so we would recommend adding a second Body Systems and Applied Anatomy 2 to our catalog for students, particularly in their junior and senior year. Within mathematics programming, The high school is recommending adding a year-long financial algebra course as an elective offering. Oh, sorry. Him moving distracted me. Sorry. Things are happening. Like, I'm not doing that. Okay. Sorry. Elective offerings for students who've completed Algebra 2. And so this course would extend students' mathematical knowledge while allowing them to model and explore the real world of financial phenomena, including interpreting and justifying reasoning to make data-supported financial decisions. And this course would be an alternative for students who potentially do not want to take calculus, but are looking for a higher level mathematics option. The Social Studies Department is recommending adding Advanced Placement African American Studies. The senior high school has been exploring this course since College Board introduced it in 2022. The course focuses on African American history, culture, and contributions, encompassing topics like early African societies, the transatlantic slave trade, the civil rights movement, and modern Black cultural movements. This course would complement, not replace, our current African American history courses and expand students' opportunities to explore our past. In addition to that, our social studies department would like to change a course title. The Advanced Placement World History course, we would like it to actually be Advanced Placement World History Modern. This is following a College Board's lead. The course was modified to focus specifically on modern history in 2020. And so this update would just, again, provide clarity for families during the course selection process and better represent the curriculum being taught. Finally, our last recommendation is within the science department. The high school recommends modifying Advanced Placement Physics C into 2 courses. The 2 courses would be Advanced Placement Physics C Mechanics and Advanced Placement Physics C Electricity and Magnetism. And the purpose for this modification is to better align the instructional minutes for the courses with the College Board recommendations. And we believe that this will increase students' opportunities to be successful in these courses. Advanced Placement Physics C does have 2 advanced placement exams, and it is recommended to be taught as 2 separate courses by College Board. And with that, I will take any questions you might have.
Any questions from board members?
One comment, the finance class, I know that is a mandate, but I am very pleased to see that all students will have access. This is something that all students will
Every
have
10th
access
grader,
to.
yes.
Yep, in Pennsylvania. So that is great. The African American history course, I know I asked this question before, but I think it's worth asking again to make sure that that course does not start at a story of Black people in chains, that it incorporates the resistance, the rebellion, the revolution, and highlights the heroes and not just the hardships, although that is part of the story. And I believe I was able to receive a list of the courses that showed that we are looking at the African diaspora, we're looking at countries in Africa. The story is not starting from a place of chains.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes, the course does start in Africa with the origins of Africa dysphoria. Did I say it right?
Diaspora.
Sorry, diaspora. It moves through. It does obviously discuss enslavement and moves through resistance and the practices of freedom and ends with debates in our current times.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Any?
I just had one quick question of clarification. You mentioned that the World History course title is being modified so that it's modern history. Just out of curiosity, where does that start?
The 1200s.
Okay.
Is considered modern.
Right.
To present. Yeah.
I know. Historians have a very different sense of what the term modern means than most people.
I guess, and that change did happen in 2020, and the AP course is called that, and we did not have that in our program of studies, and we just wanted to make sure that that was aligned with College Board, but also clear to families that it is studying modern history.
Okay.
Just a comment. I'm always very impressed with the course offerings that we have within our district, allowing students to really explore and delve into learning that they want to add to their repertoire. And thank you for some of these changes to be more descriptive and more deliberate so that families know what their children are choosing and getting into in advance.
Thank you. I do think that the teachers and the faculty at the high school do a nice job of really trying to work with students and families to find out what really they want to take and explore. And we've tried to add things over the years to meet those needs.
Anyone else?
How will the selection of textbooks be handled?
So if courses are approved, there would be one or two courses here that, well, they will all need some type of instructional material. And so what would happen next if they were approved is we would start committees to adopt materials, and then those would come before the board before the end of this school year so that we would have the summer to purchase and provide professional development.
Thank you.
Many of these courses do have there's a wealth of online materials and print materials that actually are free as well. So there's a lot of resources, particularly to support the financial literacy pieces and things like that. And some of these are also being provided by the state. There are resources that they're providing for us to evaluate. So,
thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Fetcher, our third and final orientation for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Mowry. At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Phil Solomon, Regional Manager at ICS, Mr. Todd Rapp, CEO of Rapp Strategies, and Mr. Peter Leatherman, CEO of the Morris Leatherman Company, to provide an update on Abington School District's future facilities planning.
Okay, well, thank you for having us back. I'm Phil Solomon from ICS. I have David Schrader with me as well. And Todd Rapp is online. Unfortunately, he's not feeling so well, so he didn't want to come here and cough and sneeze. But he'll be presenting most of this. In many ways, this is the culmination of a 2-year process. And what we have tonight is quite a bit of information that we've culled from surveys and scientific surveys and tools such as Thought Exchange. So we are very excited to present this, and hopefully you'll find it very informative. And then obviously we'll be available for questions afterwards. With that, I was going to hand it over to Mr. Rapp to start the presentation.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, members of the Board of School Directors, Dr. Fetcher and staff. I'm Todd Rapp from Rapp Strategies. You've heard from me before on the various issues during the planning process here. Peter Leatherman sends his apologies. Just a reminder that the Morris Leatherman Company, they're the ones who conduct the field work, draw the sample, are responsible for all data collection and data quality on this type of research work. And then Peter and I work together to analyze the results of the survey. Peter has been through the slide presentation carefully, and he agrees 100% with the findings that we're providing here and the recommendation at the end. If we could move on to the next slide. Just a reminder that this was really the last step of public input that the Board of School Directors and the administration requested as part of your planning process, trying to understand what investments you should be making in your facilities. This began back in November of 2023. And as you can tell from the diagram here, we've taken a number of different steps over time, adding certain information for the public to be able to increase their knowledge and get a fuller understanding of what the project is. We had an earlier survey, scientific survey that was conducted in January of 2024, which was complemented by an online survey that was open for any member of the public to take. We replicated that here in December of 2024, a different survey, but once again, we offered an online version of that for any resident to be able to take, just to make sure that no one feels like that they've been excluded from the process of providing input to the board. Ultimately, all this information has come together in the assessments, analysis that we've done, the development of the options, and ultimately now providing this information from your residents to help you with your decision. Next slide. So the core of what you're going to see here is the scientific survey. The methodology of this was 500 adults, and the adults reflect the demographics of the Abington School District. This is really the only type of research that we can do that we can tell you Demographically, the sample represents demographically the 44,000 some adults who live in this district. It is a telephone survey that was conducted in December. You see there the statistics on what percentage of the sample was cell phone only. And you should look at the data as a margin of error of plus or minus 4.5%. As we compared the demographics of the earlier survey with this survey, we saw only one distinction. And that is that the sample was slightly less Democratic and slightly more Republican than the sample we saw in January 2024. If we all think about the November election, that probably makes a little bit of sense for the sample here, as you had a different performance level for the two parties in the 2024 election than we saw in 2022, for example. The original survey we did in January was focused on identifying the right strategies to study. It was really a look at what people thought of their current schools and what are some of the challenges they were facing. Here, we're really trying to help you pick the right plan to submit to voters. And so the questions were somewhat different. Phil, let's start walking through those questions. One of the most striking things we found out was that 90% of your residents want a chance to make this decision. We asked whether or not the district should propose a special 2025 referendum to let voters decide whether to make investments in the middle school. Remember, in the earlier survey, we had already concluded that people believe the middle school and your oldest schools, which of course would be the middle school, need the most investment. We asked this both early in the survey and later in the survey. Early in the survey, 91% said that you should conduct a special referendum. 17% believe that strongly. Only 6% said no. By the post-test, it was still 89%. Pardon me, I'm going to take a sip of water here. With 11% saying no.
Todd's struggling a bit with a cold from the airplane.
But I'll tell you right now, Phil, there's no better place to have a staycation if you're sick than in Willow Grove. So I recommend. So who are those 11%? Okay, well, 62% of them reported that they don't follow the school district activities that closely. 75% didn't support any plan during any part of the survey. 75% believe that the funding for the school district is just fine. You should be able to use that funding for the middle school. And 57% oppose nearly any tax increase for schools. I really appreciate your patience. Next slide. We asked about the perceptions of the quality of facilities. We asked about the high school in part so we could have something to measure the middle school results against. And we asked whether you felt like it was modern, aging but functioning, past its prime, or should be replaced. As you can see, there's significantly different results for the middle school than there are for the high school. With the middle school, nearly half of the people responded that it's either past its prime or it needs replacing. Now, who believes that it's aging but just functioning? Well, it was largely people who are uninterested in the tax increase to improve schools. It's people who don't believe new schools necessarily improve communities. And it's people who are not predisposed to vote for particularly any option. By that, I mean is that they were rather equally divided between the replacement or repair. But those who also who said aging and they were divided, it's also important to point out that it was not based on how closely they followed the activities of the school district. So it wasn't necessarily people who lack knowledge of what's going on. It's just a group of people who, frankly, have different opinions about how to deal with the situation. But if you go to the people who say that the middle school is either past its prime or needs to be replaced, that group of people pretty strongly fell towards the option of replacing. For them, the question was no longer replace or repair. They really believe you have to replace. For them, the question came down to one school versus two schools in terms of replacing the existing middle school. I hope that makes sense. Once you reach the conclusion the middle school is past its prime, you are far more likely to say replace it. And then what you're wrestling with is 1 or 2 schools. Next slide. So you can remember from the first survey we did, we talked a lot about environmental factors. We didn't ask all the questions from the first survey, but we did ask 3 core questions, which are about the confidence in the board and the administration. Those questions are whether or not people trust you to do what's right for the children and staff of this district, that during the last couple of years, the school district has managed your budget effectively and efficiently, and whether or not you do a good job of involving community leaders, parents, and interested citizens in decisions about the school. The first thing I want you to note is for all 3 of those, you got remarkably positive results. And in fact, the results are extremely close to where you were back in January. Now, I think we told you back then, Peter and I have worked in a lot of school districts together, and I'm not sure we've ever seen this type of response in terms of school district decision-making. I'm glad we asked this a second time, because you always worry that, okay, if you ask it only in one survey, maybe you're getting a false positive there of some kind. That's not true at all. In fact, 72%, or almost 3/4 of people, answered yes to each of these 3 in terms of their trust of the school board and the administration. And of those, 85% would support a property tax increase to protect the current investment they've made in their schools, and 93% want there to be a referendum. Next slide. Now, we also asked about whether or not people believe that new local funding is needed. Rather than ask it as just one question, we split it into 2. The first question was whether or not Abington schools are a good investment and you'd support a property tax increase to protect that investment. The second is whether or not you think they're adequately funded. 66% agreed that you are a good investment, that they'd support a property tax increase to protect that investment. We didn't say how much that increase was. It's just their gut reaction to that. 17% strongly agreed. When we asked about adequate funding, roughly half, or 51%, said no, you're not adequately funded. And when you take those 2 together, 47%, or roughly half, are supportive for new local funding, meaning that they don't think you're adequately funded, and they would support a property tax increase to protect their current investment. On top of that, another 18% are open to a property tax increase, even though they tend to believe you are adequately funded. In other words, they're the folks who would say, show me what the plan is. 96% of that group believe there should be a referendum. Next slide. So we asked about choosing between plans in several ways. We began by simply asking about the overall strategy, not talking about the cost, not talking about the tax impact. Just how should we approach this? Should the middle school be replaced? And if so, should it be replaced with 1 or 2 schools? 25% said, no, you should repair the current school. 63% said you should replace. Out of that group, more said that you should replace with 1 school than said you should replace with 2 schools, although I'll acknowledge it was very close together. When it came to the intensity, those who believe that strongly, 17% strongly believe you need replacement. Only 4% strongly believe in repair. Now, again, this is without knowing the cost, the tax impact, any of the questions like this. It's just a gut reaction. Now, your parents, and this is on the right side, 38% chose replace with 1 school, 37% said replace with 2 schools. That's 75% total. Of that group of 72% who was highly confident in the district decision-making that I talked about 2 slides ago, 39% said replace with 1 school, 37% said replace with 2 schools. Of the group that thinks that more local funding is needed, remember that 47%, 44% said replace with 1 school, 43% said replace with 2 schools. That's 87% who said replace. It's important to look at the people who are confident in what the school district is doing already, confident in board decision making, and who are natural stakeholders of the district, to look at what they think, because that's examples of people who are going to be listened to in the community by their friends and neighbors. Next slide. So next we asked about 3 referenda. Referenda A, in this case, we began to talk about the actual cost and the tax impact. So referendum A is a renovation plan at $270 million or $51 a month. Referendum B is a new school on the current campus. That's a $285 million or $54 a month. And referendum C is two middle schools, $450 million and $86 a month. I should point out to you that these aren't numbers that we pulled out of a hat. The ICS and Schrader teams have worked very diligently to try to determine what the right numbers are for these. And we think that that these numbers would reflect what would be put on a referendum question if any of these options were chosen. Referendum A for renovate, there was 54% support, 42% opposition. And you can see that I broke out the strong supporters in each of those also. For referendum B, the single new middle school, 60% support, 36% opposition. And for referendum C, the two middle schools, total support dropped to 41% and opposition to 56%. Now, if you look at that, that's the impact of telling people the cost and the tax increase every month. Once we did that for the new two middle schools, an option that was relatively close to one middle school has begun to fall off again. And the primary reason for that, from everything we've looked at in the survey, is simply the cost. They're not willing to pay that extra $32 a month to have the two schools. Then we followed that up and we asked people what the best option was and what they felt the weakest option would be. And this was really interesting to us. In terms of the best option, the winner was referendum B, followed by referendum C, the two schools, and referendum A, to renovate. But when we asked the weakest option, very few people said referendum B. Far more people felt that one of the other two was the weakest option. There's a coalescing going on here around referendum B. And the best way to explain this is to say that the people who support referendum C as their favorite plan won't reject referendum B just because it's only one school. And the people who believe in renovation are at least open to the idea of having a new school, particularly, I would argue, because the price is relatively close to the same. And I think that what's in the circle there is as important as anything for thinking about how to prioritize these plans. The last thing I would point out here is that 23% said when we asked the best and the weakest option that they would support no plan. Now look at referendum B, 36% opposition and 23% said no plan at all. Basically, 2 out of every 3 opponents have decided right away, I'm not voting for anything. It doesn't matter at all. And that's going to be true, I mean, frankly, no matter what you put on the ballot. That's just a reminder, and I'm not criticizing having that opinion. Everybody gets to make their own decision about how they want money invested in public facilities. But it's just a reminder that roughly 1 out of every 4 voters simply do not want any tax increase whatsoever that would improve the schools. And that makes up most of the opposition to referendum B. Next slide. So then we broke out those 3 groups again that we tried to look at more closely. The column in green is just a reminder of the initial support for replacement, either with 1 or 2 schools. All of these groups would support referendum A. And what you see here when it says 71/16, that's the total support, and then we break out the strong support. They'd all support referendum A. However, they all support referendum B by a higher amount, and particularly those first 2 groups more intensely. And then referendum C, while they do support them, you will notice that the groups that have the highest confidence in your decision making, it's barely a majority at 54%, and your parents are only at 52% for supporting the 2 middle school plan. Next slide. We finally asked whether or not the district was planning carefully. The first one said, are you confident that the Abington School District considering the needs of students and staff as they develop a plan for these investments? This was asked after all the referendum options were provided. 79% agreed that yes, you're considering the needs of students and staff. Note that the intensity, the strong support is a 13-to-1 ratio. We asked if you're confident that the school district is looking to invest tax dollars carefully by finding the best funding plan for facilities investments. That was 73%, with the same percentage saying strongly yes. I will tell you that it's surprising to me that this result was within 6 percentage points of the other one. We often see the folks' opinion on whether using tax dollars wisely drop off by much more, double digits, for example, than we've seen here in Abington. I am guessing a reason for that is because of the very extensive public input and information campaign that you've had to date to make sure people understand each step of the process. Now, next slide. This wasn't the only work we did. We took the exact same survey that we gave on the telephone scientific survey, and we put that online and invited every member of the public to take that survey. The important thing here, though, is that this is a self-selected sample. And every time we've done this as a firm, where we've both had a telephone survey and then an online survey, the online survey becomes dominated by school stakeholders. That is, it's not a representative population. But what I like about doing this is that it gives a lot more depth to the information from school stakeholders, especially parents. Now, of the survey, 2,164 people started the survey, which we opened a few days after the scientific survey began, and we closed it the morning of December 24th. Of the people who started the survey, 37% did not complete it. And of those, 2/3 quit by question 3. They looked at the questions and they said, nope, I don't want to do this anymore. They were just more curious. And by the time you hit question 27, which was really unwrapping the strategies, over 85% of them quit the survey. However, 1,361 people completed the survey, and that's a great amount. 44% are current parents. On the telephone survey, that's about 29%. 31% are graduates of Abington School District or parents of grads. That's relatively close to what we saw in the scientific survey. And 24% don't have a direct connection, and that's lower than we saw in the scientific survey. Next slide. So I'm showing you a few highlights here of what this data showed, and what you see here for those parents, 44% of the sample, the other connection to the school district of 31%, and having no current connection. When we asked whether we should go new or repair, the current parents felt very strongly about going new. The other two groups did not. And then we asked the people who answered new, should it be one middle school or two middle schools? Interestingly, they began by saying having a minority agree in having one middle school in all three groups. But then when we asked the specific referendum questions that included the tax impact and the cost overall, you can see some greatly different results. In the case of parents, they overwhelmingly gravitated to the one middle school referendum option. In those who have a different connection to the school district, roughly half of them would support either the remodeling or the single middle school. But support for the two middle school option really fell apart. And for those who don't have a direct connection to the Abington School District, there was a slight preference for the one middle school referendum. Then we went down and we listed all three of those again and said, pick your favorite plan. For two of the groups, it was one middle school. For the third group, it was no plan. What was the least favorite? Across the board, it was two middle schools. And whether we should hold a referendum, it was overwhelmingly support once again. Now, I'll remind you again, this is not a scientifically representative sample of the community. It just reflects the opinions of these 1,361 people. But there's 1,361 people who are interested enough in the school district to give you some data. So it's important to look at this and compare it to what we saw in the scientific survey. Phil, next slide. Now, we also did a thought exchange survey. This was done earlier than either of the previous surveys I just reported on. And the thought exchange, the goal with this was to have people who either attended the open house or watched the open house online, the presentation from it, would then follow up by taking a questionnaire that we included. It's intended to be qualitative research more than quantitative. I don't mind providing some quantitative data, but the great thing about Thought Exchange is how it uses AI to analyze qualitative answers to questions, and really, that's where you get the things like the word clouds and the tools like that you could use. But we did want to take a look at least generally where we saw support coming in. Now, not everybody watched the full video of the presentation. Some people just went in and took the questionnaire separately themselves. 61% of the respondents were parents, once again, far higher than the community as a whole. 9% were staff, 21% were the community. Of the people who responded to the survey, nearly 3/4 agreed with replacing the middle school. 63% did agree that 2 middle schools would likely benefit students, but the tax concerns led them still to support the 1 middle school option over the 2 middle schools once we showed them what the cost was. And in this case, what we did was we laid out several options, and then we said, now let us tell you about the cost and the tax impact of each option, and we let them answer again. And when they were identifying their important concerns, in addition to educational needs, they said safety and maintenance costs were identified as important concerns. Once again, a self-selected sample, but it's good. It's just more data, and it helps either reaffirm what we saw in a scientific survey and hopefully provides a little bit more color. Next slide. So just a reminder, a few months ago, we put this all together in 4 options. Several of these had multiple areas that we could have gone. For example, option 1 had an A and a B. Option 3 had an A and a B. It basically broke down between a single middle school building and a 2 middle school strategy, and whether or not they would have impact on the elementary school level or potentially have to see some investment in the elementary schools at the same time as the middle school. Next slide. And what we've learned from all these assessments is that, first of all, as I said, the middle school is the highest priority. We then identified the multiple options to consider. We went through a process of remodel, 1 middle school, 2 middle schools with options within each. We learned that managing tax impact was important to residents, and what we concluded was we've got to find a plan that has the best long-range value for students, staff, and residents. Now, I'm sure everybody can say that that's what you're looking for, but that's important because the best long-range value is not necessarily the least expensive plan, but it's rather how people believe their tax dollars are being used best. And as we've sought the input from the staff, the parents, and residents many times over, these are the conclusions that we've drawn. Residents want a chance to vote. Building new is preferred because continued investment in the current middle school isn't that much cheaper. And 2 middle school seems too expensive. Even the best supporters pause at the tax impact of $86 a month. So now we need to narrow this down to one plan. And Dr. Fetcher said, you guys, you come forward and tell us what you think we should do. So on the next slide, you'll see what our recommendations are, building off of the 6 options that we tested. We've taken 1A and 1B off the list. In both cases, the cost benefit, it was nearly the same cost to build 1 new school as continuing to invest in the current school. If you continue to invest in the current school, you still have an older school that's going to need more work over time. We won't fully address the educational needs that are in that middle school. And frankly, a big issue was the disruption during construction. There would be multiple classes of middle schoolers who would attend the middle school and have 1, 2, or even 3 years where they were going to school in a construction site if we remodeled the middle school. And we asked a question on that in the survey, and we found that it was a very high concern to residents to try to avoid disrupting classroom education during construction. When we looked at 3A and 3B, 3A, if you remember right, was a middle school, a new one on the current site, and then one at Glenside Weldon. We found that the site was probably not suitable for the needs of a new middle school. And that was through informal conversations that we've had with other local officials in the area. 3B would have a new one, a different new school at Copper Beach. But what we found there was that, and along with option number 4, which would create the grades 5, 6, and 7, and 8 plan, that the educational benefits seem strong to people, but the additional cost caused public support to wane, even for parents. As importantly, nearly everybody who supported option 3 or option 4 also would support option 2. Finally, and we didn't test this at all, but we at least wanted to make sure that we made this comment for you, that options 3 and 4 would result in additional ongoing operating costs if you have 2 middle schools instead of just 1. That puts pressure on your current general fund. And let's face it, What we're trying to do here is find a funding source that doesn't put pressure on your ongoing classroom needs. Bill? So that's the results of the research that we've done, and we're here to answer any questions that you have about it.
So I know that was a lot of information. We are happy to field questions, unpack any additional information you may need. I have David Schrader with me as well if you have architectural questions or any process questions as well.
Thank you for the presentation. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have a question to start. Could you expand on timeframes for the options? I'd like to hear specifically for option 2, best estimate you have on when residents would expect the project to be completed and start to finish, and then in comparison to some of the other options that have been on the table and explored.
Sure. Option 2. So you always have a design and a municipal approval process. So that's 12 to 18 months, depending on how quickly you could get that done. From there, you have a construction process for the building. That's 30 to 36 months, somewhere in that time frame, depending on how the final building looks and operates. After that, you still have a year, roughly, of the demolition of the existing building and then the relocation of the fields. So if you remember where we're building or where the building would be built, you would be relocating one of those athletic fields. So that would need to be done in the year after that. If you look back into any of the renovation strategies, you can add an additional year to year and a half to that just for the shuffling of students. Because we would have to have a significant amount of modular classrooms so that we could create what's called swing space, so you could operate or work on part of the building while those students are being educated in a modular classroom form.
Okay, so it's, from what I'm hearing you say, and I just want to be clear, I've had a lot of residents ask me this recently. The best estimate for replace with one middle school is 4 to 5 years. It sounds like, based on the numbers. And you're saying that that is the shortest amount of time in the options available, that the other options presented would add an additional year to 18 months minimally to it. Okay.
That is correct.
Could I just ask a follow-up clarification? So 4 to 5 years is start to finish, design to field relocation and demolition, correct? So how long to occupancy of a new middle school?
So remember, so it's about 12 to 18
Right.
months on the design,
Right.
and 30 to 36 months in the construction. So at the end of that, you could occupy that building.
Okay.
So then you still have other work going on site, but the building would be occupied, and necessarily the other building would be unoccupied because that building would have to be demoed.
Correct.
So,
Okay.
sorry, did that answer your question? Or
I think so. Thank you.
I can build a graphic, which would be probably helpful, because I know this has come up a couple times, and I believe I have one in one of the presentations, but I will send that to the board just for clarification.
Thank you.
Could you remind all of us of the current status of the middle school, the cost of the deferred maintenance that we've already identified as needing to occur, and the ramifications of not going to referendum and how that could impact the budget in the long term? And I know that might be answered by multiple individuals here.
No worries. I'll start with the first one. So if you remember, the very first thing we did over 2 years ago was just a condition assessment of the existing building. That condition assessment showed about $206 million worth of just maintenance, deferred maintenance that was needed. So regardless of what you do, that investment will have to be made in the building over the next several years. Many of these systems are well beyond their useful life. Many are failing. They are not failed, but failure is inherently unpredictable. So you have very large systems and money will need to be invested. The tricky thing is, if you wait to try to make a decision at that point, you may have to invest money along the way, meaning if you did want to make a decision at some time in the future, you would have kind of thrown good money after bad. So you're at a point right now where you can make a clean decision and hopefully, make the best decision for this community, and maybe avoid some of that investment that you may need to make in the near future. That was the first part of your question, but I'm sorry. Please remind me the second part.
The long-term budget impact of not going to referendum and just paying for these items as they come along.
So, you would then have to do all of this under your Act 1 operating budget. So, I'm not sure that, I'm not in the best position to answer that, but I don't believe that the district's finances are in a position to do that. So to invest that money, you would certainly have to be taking from the educational program, teaching, learning, those kind of programs to then shift resources into construction. I think what you're asking about the referendum is that allows you to have a specialized portion outside of your Act 1 that funds this program for the long period or for the long time. So it would have a minimal impact on your operating budget. Now, the only other options that would be the two building options. Any of those two building options would have ongoing operational costs because will be some duplication of efforts, nursing, food service, those kind of things. You do get economies of scale in a single building. So you'd have to consider that in any of the two building options. The minimum estimate of that was about $1.5 million per year of additional just staffing costs and operational costs that go along with that, not inclusive of the construction costs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There was a part of Mr. Muhammad's question that I know there was a bunch of them. Can you speak to the most pressing issues at the current middle school that would need to be addressed?
I might phone a friend to David. He did a lot of the condition assessment. Sure.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure which system to hone in on. The HVAC systems are having challenges, as you probably know, and will continue to. The building envelope is really one of our bigger challenges. The exterior window systems, roofing that goes along with that, everything on the perimeter of the building. So when you lump together the HVAC, the building envelope, and then of course lighting and electrical, you're kind of down to the structure. And so those are the kinds of things that we are looking at as things you'll have to deal with in the very near future.
So you're saying the cost to maintain those things over the years could conceivably cost the same amount that it would cost to actually build a new school?
It is very similar. So the analysis that we did initially says $206 million just to replace all those systems, and they are all in need of replacement. There's very little that we can reuse within the building. So if you look at the renovate add strategy, there's almost every system needs to be replaced. There's literally nothing to be reused except, as David said, the structure of the concrete.
And how would that cost compare to a replacement?
So the replacement value is $285 million. So it's you got a little bit of there's a significant difference there. Now, remember, the replacement option gives you more square footage than you have now. Your existing square footage is about 300,000 square feet. The program that was done, the program that the educators would like to run, require 345,000 square feet. So you are comparing a little bit of apples and oranges there. If you were to build out the program or build out the existing building to the program needs, you're then a lot closer. And I will look this up, and I believe it is 270 million compared to 285 million. So you're getting a lot closer to the same cost.
I think it's about a difference of about $3 a month.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Slide 9.
Just wanted to add on those elements that you mentioned. You didn't mention ADA accessible standards for the building. You also didn't mention like a fire system or a sprinkler system to protect our, 21? How many kids do we have in that building, Dr. Fetcher?
Almost 2,200.
2,200 students. So those are two large elements that you didn't mention in those renovations that I think the residents, should be aware of as well.
Well, there's a significant, thank you for bringing those points up. And remember, we also looked at things like the little theater and some of the functionality of different spaces throughout the facility. We were just talking about systems at that point in time, but truly accessibility throughout the facility, usability of that building, the way that it's set up for today's educational structure. And that sort of
eases into from earlier presentations that middle of the road concept that Phil just talked about, which is the demolition of some, replacement of some, to try to get some of those spaces up to par, really. Yep.
And also just to clarify, like, should that happen and those needs need to be met, which speaking as a parent, those are very important needs. That would have to happen while the students are occupying the building in this scenario. So all these updates that you're mentioning right here would mean the students, the staff, the learning, the curriculum, how it's being executed on a daily basis. I mean, long-term projects, the public health standards and safety concerns that we would have as a result of demolition and remodeling on a 1964-year-old building, and the products used then. So those would all be considerations that would happen as we moved along that process as well.
Yeah, that's correct. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you've got it nailed. I mean, anytime we're going to try to fix something in this existing building, it's occupied. And all the systems are so large that it's not that you can't really just do them over a summer. Any one of the systems that David discussed, any of the ADA upgrades, they're going to take more than a summer. Even HVAC, even roofing, the building's so massive, that's more than a summer project. So all of them would need to take place during an occupied time frame. In addition, if you wait until something fails to address it, there are a lot of secondary downstream issues with that. So one, you don't have a lot of options about upgrading a system. You almost have to go with a like-for-like replacement because you're going to be in an emergency. Two, when you do something in an emergency format, it does cost more. You've got to expedite materials, and some materials are not even available in an expedited fashion today. There's still supply chain issues stemming from the pandemic. So many of these things would be very problematic to try to react to versus to plan for, if that's what you're getting at, because that's certainly an issue here, especially with how obsolete many of the systems are.
Right.
Fire systems, all of those things would also need to be upgraded. There's almost nothing you could do in this building that would not trigger a total code required upgrade. In addition to that, there are rules about how that works. So any major replacement, HVAC or otherwise, would then trigger all the other ADA compliance issues and code issues.
So though option 2 is slightly more expensive, you eliminate the interruption to learning that's going to occur, where students and staff and the entire community is going to be highly impacted by in a negative way. You have a little bit more cost, but it's still not at the higher end of some of the options we saw before. And so students and staff see this building come up, move into the building, and then they see the old building eventually come down.
That is exactly correct. Yep.
And that's probably, the end result is critical, obviously. What you end up with as a district is critically important. Processes as well. And so the point you've made is either you're going to have a new building standing on the site, students will be going in an unaltered facility, move into the new facility, and then the old building comes down. So they're not living through the construction in the buildings. They will on the site. Everybody's going to have to bear with the site. In the renovation option, we have built-in modular classrooms, so you can move entire groups of students out into the modular classrooms, and they'll continue to move around the building as parts of the building are renovated and finished. So there is some disruption in the process while the students are going to school, while the construction's occurring, correct?
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, so I'm sorry.
Please.
Okay. So if the public decides that we're not going to go with any of these options, am I correct in saying that we will eventually end up spending the same amount of money correcting problems in a reactive fashion, probably down the line, and not have a new building to show for it? Is that correct?
That's correct. And you still have to apply the inflationary factors to that. That 206 is today's dollars, right?
Okay.
So as you inflate them to the future, it's going to be more than that. So yeah, that's the floor, not the ceiling, if you will.
Okay.
Just a few comments. I believe most of my questions have been answered. I just wanted to comment on the transparency of this process and how much information the public has access to. And I want to thank you for the hard work that has gone into that, including creating a calculator so each individual residents can look up their information and see how these choices impact them individually. I think that was huge. I also wanted to highlight that the surveys that were done, two of them scientific and two of them just general, anyone who wants to give feedback, were similar in nature. And it looks like the majority of our community members in Abington and Rockledge would like to proceed with option 2. I think it would behoove us as a board to be able to give feedback to Dr. Fetcher and his staff about what option we would like, given community input, we would like to move forward with, so that the next meeting they can present what that referendum would look like.
Could I ask one more question just before we do that?
You could even ask more than one.
Great, thanks. I just want to get to it. I agree, though. Regarding, I can't remember what slide it was, but you said, I think I just remember seeing the number 54 per month. I believe that was option.
Slide 9.
Thank you. Can you explain for what value, home value that is? And I'm assuming that's the average value for an Abington resident. Just clarify that.
That is the median homestead value.
Okay.
That's the same value that Mr. Leonetti uses as the median, so it's
in the middle.
I think it's typical for you to see that as a median taxpayer.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to know that for sure.
Did you want to know what that house value was? I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure your question is
Actually,
answered.
yes, thanks. Yeah, I would.
Yeah, we have it
what
as
that correlates with too.
$387,402.
Any other questions?
Just want to make comments because I feel like there's been so many good questions. But to say thank you for the presentation, and also thank you to everyone who answered surveys, answered phone surveys, went ahead and took the survey, because this information is super valuable and important to us in making the decision on what to do going forward. So thank you, everyone, for your involvement.
Brian, sorry.
I would like to make a comment. I think all of my questions have been answered. This has been extremely thorough and comprehensive. As Ms. Brown had said about like feedback, I do agree with the direction. I think that, especially based off of the scientific data that was presented tonight by Todd, it's pretty clear of what the community wants when we factor in the dollars and cents. And I definitely could support putting to referendum for the one referendum B or option 2, the one new middle school. I think that makes the most sense, and it's also backed up by the data of the community in terms of what we can afford.
Okay. Anyone? Sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah. At the beginning of last year, the residents shared that they had concerns about the middle school, which was backed up by the study of the building the year prior. And so we'd seen that was a concern. The residents shared that they would like to see something be done about those issues, and they threw out all sorts of ideas, and we were all wrestling with those ideas and have been wrestling with those ideas for about 2 years now. And here we are. The residents said we would love to see 2 middle schools, but we don't have the tax tolerance for 2 middle schools. Some people said we're okay with just renovating and expanding or just doing the maintenance. But we see that the cost is about the same as the one new school option. And the one new school option is less disruptive. and will yield benefits when it comes to the makeup of the school, the flexibility of the school, being able to offer innovative academic programming to future generations of students in Abington and Rockledge. And so I would totally support the one new middle school option and hope to see that put forth in the next meeting.
Kathy?
I walk around with my dog in the neighborhood, and people now know I'm on the school board, so they stop and ask me questions. A few of them says, "Why do we need a new middle school?" Well, last week I had the opportunity to take a tour of the middle school because I had never been in there besides the little theater. Yes, I could clearly see we do need a new middle school, and I was happy to have that tour. That way I can intelligently speak to people who don't think we need to spend the money. Now, I'm in that bracket with the senior. I've lived in the township for 29 years. My mortgage will be done next year, so I'll have to pay the increase in full, write a check, not in a mortgage. So somebody like myself, we will feel the impact a lot more than somebody having a $50 increase to their mortgage. But it's, I mean, it's just like it's a no-brainer. It's just something that we really need to do for the community and for the Abington students. So I have to support it. Personally, I did like the two-school option, but it's just too cost prohibitive. So I would support the one.
Okay. Anyone else have anything else to add?
I'll go. I originally, when we were given the options, as an educator, I thought the two-school option was definitely the best one. As we worked through the last year, through the process, we realized for many reasons it's probably not feasible. Financially, the options are just way more expensive, and the operating costs would be too much. One of the things that we've talked a lot about is how to make one big middle school feel smaller on the inside. And I think that that's something design-wise that we would want to look at if we could do it so that it's not just one big school with 3 floors. It's, got smaller areas for smaller groups of kids, because I think all of us feel that 2,200 kids in a middle school is a lot. And exploring ways that we can make it feel a little bit smaller and more community-based as we move forward, if this is the option that, we decide on. But I do want to thank everyone who took the time to respond to the surveys. We really have taken all of that information into account. And we've spent countless hours with, ICS, and thank you so much for all the information that you give us. And I feel pretty confident that after looking at the data, that the one new middle school feels like the best option for Abington right now. So.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to add, the process has been interesting thus far, and the time and energy and the layers of feedback that we've received throughout, I guess, over the last year. Additionally, one of the biggest concerns that I saw with this was some of the public health things that I brought up in my questions today. And it feels good to know that the residents are looking at options that are considering that, the safety of our students, the safety of the staff, and long-term solutions for the best value of the community. I would be happy to support it. And ultimately, it going to referendum, it really does make this a community-based decision. It's not just about any one of us sitting here or any one of the 1,300 people that took the non-scientific survey, or the 500 people that took the scientific survey, or the handful of people that I talk to on a regular basis, or the countless numbers of people that showed up at one of the open houses, or that grab one of each, us in the street, or when we're on the bus stops waiting for our kids, or just talking to your neighbors or friends. It's an opportunity for all of us to collectively come together and make the decision for what's best for the community. So yes, I would support option 2, and I would support it going, for the voters to make the final decision.
So I want to thank you guys for a great presentation, for your hard work up until now. I know we have had a lot of questions throughout this process, and you've been very accommodating, very forthcoming in answering those. So I'm thankful for that. I also want to thank my fellow board members tonight for their thoughtful questions. This is a group undertaking. Many of us think of questions that the others don't, and I feel like that was on really impressive display tonight. I would add a couple of thoughts to the points that others have made. For me, I agree that the solution that seems to rise to the top for many of the people who participated in the various surveys is the second one. And I'm happy to support that. I was also struck by how many people who participated in those surveys wanted an opportunity to vote, to make a decision on this for the community, for the students. And so I certainly want to add my thanks to the people who participated in those surveys. But I could not in good conscience, having seen those survey results, deny them the opportunity to weigh in through a referendum question. And I think finally, my kids started in this district right after the big investment in the grade schools. I think my daughter was in the second class to start at Highland. And one of the reasons we moved to Abington is because we saw it as a community that cared about education, that was willing to make investments in facilities and curricula for students. There were school board members and residents who voted to support the building of those new grade schools, schools that benefited my kids. And I cannot in good conscience deny students who have yet to come through our schools the same opportunity. And so unless I'm mistaken, Dr. Fetcher, I believe the board is directing you to prepare a referendum question to be voted on the next meeting's agenda.
Okay, will do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, we are now moving on to comments from citizens. Before I do that, I do want to point out that we will have 3 opportunities for public comment on the possibility or on the referendum question, and before the board votes to advance it, if that's their choice. So I just want to put that out there. Comments from citizens are being conducted both in person and by phone. The phone number to participate in public comments is 267-715-3717 and is being displayed on the screen at this time. You'll be able to join the meeting by calling in on your mobile or landline phone. If there's anyone present who would like to make a comment, please use the microphone either to your left or to your right. Go ahead.
Thank you. First off, I want to say Merry Christmas to everyone as we celebrated the birth of our Lord and Savior, and a Happy New Year, and I hope you all have a prosperous 2025. Also, I recognize the new leadership team. I wasn't here in December. I wish you well with that. These are tough jobs you have to do. So first, taxes are not investments. It's a great euphemism, but you're always asking the poorest of us to pay for something, and without considering the impact on their life as opposed to the impact on your budget. So as far as elderly on a fixed income, poor people, parents struggling with their kids already in school, I'd love to hear some options and discussions on that. The second one is this is a $300 to $500 million tax increase. That's what you're voting on. You've completely misrepresented the referendum. The referendum is required by state law when you want to increase our taxes beyond whatever the limit is. It has nothing to do with you giving us a choice to vote on a school plan. You can write the referendum however you want. You're required to propose a referendum in order to get people to agree to increase their taxes by more than what's legally required. So I think you misrepresented that, and I don't know why unless you don't understand that. There was never one question asked on how does any of this improve education? Like, why didn't we present a question that says, we're going to spend $100 million of new taxpayers' money. How should we best spend this to increase or improve our kids' education? We're not asked that. And that's because, have any of you read the ICS contract? I'm asking an honest question.
No.
I hope you have, because I have a question. First, we paid $75,000, then another $75,000. And then if you vote to go with a referendum, then they get $15,000 more. But in this next part here, maybe you can confirm this for me. On attachment B, does ICS get 10 to 12% of the total budget? In other words, a $20 to potentially $50 million contract, if in fact this gets approved? I'm asking that honestly because that's the motivation for ICS to develop a propaganda campaign to convince people to voluntarily increase their taxes. So here's what I propose. You should have bought St. Basil's. We could have had a school and 40 acres of land for far less money and then explored options for 5 or 10 years as to how to move forward. That would have saved green space and it would have given us a whole school. But nobody thought of that, even though we hired ICS. Opportunity missed, okay? Next question, when you did the tax calculator, this is what I don't understand. When we did the 2017 bond issue, it was 25 years to pay off the bonds. But when I looked at this, Mr. Lionetti sent me told me the link today. You put a 40-year wait on these bonds. Why is that?
Thank you. Your time is up.
You're kidding.
Please take a seat.
Can I take some more time?
Please take a seat.
I don't think there's anybody else here. You won't give me any additional time.
Please take a seat. Someone else is ready to speak.
There's plenty of time. Great.
Hi, Jen Pertel from Glenside. I wanted to thank the gentleman for the presentation and for all of the work that was done to come up with this plan. I unfortunately was one of the 37% that started the survey but did not finish the survey. But luckily, I wanted the one school plan anyway, so I'm pretty happy about that. And I'm excited for what's coming in the future. I think that this is a really great step forward for Abington to maintain our standards, but also to grow and to give the kids that are coming up in the future as much opportunity as my kids had. My kids graduated from Abington, so I am again one of those parents that I'm a parent, but not of kids that are in the school now. So I just want to thank you all for all the work, and I'm excited to see what happens next. Take care.
Thank you for your voice. Mr. Green, has anyone phoned in to be recognized for public comment?
We have no callers on the line.
Okay. Dr. Fetcher?
I think that one of the comments that I would make in terms of the transparency of this process and the actual impact that was spoken about in terms of coming to what is, that of public opinion, and also having this go to a vote of the entire community truly speaks to what the community would like to see happen. So every taxpayer in Abington and Rockledge will have a voice in this. And as much as we may make recommendations from the administration side, I will not have a vote. And I think that is important and let the community speak.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I think we move on to item 5. Oh, you went, okay. 5 minutes? Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute recess, everyone. Okay. Welcome back. So I just wanted to correct myself before the break. I said we were moving on to agenda item 5. That was handled at the beginning of the meeting, and so we will move on to agenda item 6, approval of minutes. Ms. Frazier, can you please read the recommendation to approve the December meeting minutes?
Yes, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the minutes of the board reorganization meeting on December 2nd, 2024, and the board meeting on December 10th, 2024.
Second.
We have a second. This is a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. Ms. Fraser, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the personnel addenda?
Yes, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the changes in personnel as reflected in personnel addendum numbers 7.1 and 7.1A and confidential addendum number 7.1B.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Dr. Mowry. The personnel addendum begins with the retirement of Mr. Jay Blumenthal, the Abington School District tax collector for Abington Township, who has served the Abington School District for 19 years. The personnel addendum continues with the appointments of 2 administrative staff members, including Ms. Karen Sanchez, who has been appointed to serve as the Abington School District tax collector by Abington Township, and Mr. William Freisinger, who has been appointed as the network administrator. The personnel addendum also includes a request for leave of absence of 1 professional employee, appointment of 1 professional staff member, as well as a change in status for professional employee Dr. Patrick Watkins, who has completed all requirements and earned his doctorate from Newman University. Dr. Watkins has served the Abington School District for 22 years and currently serves as an elementary curriculum specialist at Rydell Elementary School. The personnel addendum continues with compensation for IEP meetings and interpreter and translation services.
Comments or questions from the board?
I just would like to say thank you for your decades of service to Mr. Blumenthal, and congratulations to Karen Sanchez, who will be coming in to pick up those reins and continue with great work. And congratulations to the additional appointments as well.
Indeed, I'd particularly like to thank congratulate newly minted Dr. Watkins on earning his doctorate. It's great to see our staff pursuing additional training and education. Congratulations to Ms. Sanchez on her appointment and Mr. Blumenthal on his retirement. And thanks to our staff for all the IEP meetings that they attend on behalf of our students. Okay. Mrs. Flanagan, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Feasy?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye. The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Ms. Fraser, can you please read the recommendation for permits for use of buildings and grounds?
Yes, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the applications for permits for use of buildings and grounds as reflected in addendum number 8.1.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Dr. Mowry. The permit addendum continues to reflect typical requests for buildings and grounds and meetings and other school events and activities for this time of year.
Are there questions or comments from the board?
Just continued thank you to the staff who create spaces for students to do things that they enjoy. It really does make a difference.
Anyone else? Nope. I second that gratitude. All right, Ms. Flanagan, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart,
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed,
Aye.
Ms. Spalding,
Aye.
Ms. Hartman,
Aye.
Ms. Frazier,
Aye.
Ms. Feasy,
Aye.
Dr. Mowry.
Aye. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Ms. Fraser, can you please read the recommendation for permission to advertise for bids?
It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the permission to advertise for bids as reflected in addendum number 9.1.
Second.
Dr. Fetcher, we have a second.
Thank you, Dr. Mowry. This evening, we have one request for permission to advertise, and that's for a middle school chair lift. The purpose of the lift is to facilitate movement from floor to floor for students who utilize wheelchair. The elevator is original to the building and has increasingly required service, which makes it unavailable for student use frequently. The installation of this lift is a matter of equity to ensure that all students have access to middle school instructional program at all times.
Okay. Questions or comments from my fellow board members?
I do have a comment. And it's going to sound a little off at first, but bear with me. Who would have thought that a chairlift would cost as much or more than a 30-passenger bus that we're going to that we have the potential to approve in the next agenda item? But is it worth it? The answer is yes, because we want to make sure that students have access. And it's students who have learning differences, it's students who have physical challenges that get the short end when we don't make the hard decisions to invest in things like a school that will provide more than just the ADA basics, but actually provide access. So this one item that I will vote yes for is one of the reasons why it's so important to think about who, as I heard a community member say, who receives the most harm when we don't make decisions or when we do make decisions. And in this case, this is a prime example of how spending $250,000 to $300,000 more than a 30-passenger bus is needed. And without hesitation, I say yes.
Anyone else? Well said. Anytime we have an opportunity to invest in curricula or changes to buildings that increase access for our students, it is, in my opinion, money well spent. Mrs. Flanagan, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart,
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed,
Aye.
Ms. Spalding,
Aye.
Ms. Hartman,
Aye.
Ms. Frazier,
Aye.
Ms. Feasy,
Aye.
Dr. Mowry.
Aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Ms. Fraser, can you please read the recommendation for awards of contracts?
Yes, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the awards of contracts as reflected in addendum number 10.1.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Dr. Mowry. Tonight, for your consideration, we have one award of contract. And as Ms. Brown mentioned, it is for a 30-passenger student transportation bus.
Questions or comments from my fellow board members? No? Okay, Mrs. Flanagan, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. Ms. Eisenhart,
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed,
Aye.
Ms. Spalding,
Aye.
Ms. Hartman,
Aye.
Ms. Frazier,
Aye.
Ms. Vacy?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Ms. Fraser, can you please read the recommendation for adoption of instructional materials?
Yes, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors, in accordance with Sections 508 and 803 of the Pennsylvania School Code, adopt new textbooks and/or instructional programs for the subjects, courses, and levels reflected in addendum number 11.1.
Second.
Dr. Fetcher, we have a second.
Thank you, Dr. Mowry. This recommendation is for the instructional materials adoption, which we discussed earlier in today's board orientation. We can answer any additional questions that you may have.
Questions or comments from board members?
Yeah, is there a yearly renewal fee after we pay the original fees for the program? Will we have to pay yearly for materials and subscriptions?
Dr. Viola, can you go through the breakdown of terms of our agreement?
Sure. The company has agreed to a 3-year payment plan for the purchase of these materials. The 3-year payment plan allows for us to have 6 years worth of materials.
Okay, great. And then after that, we'll have to purchase.
After 6 years, we would have to renegotiate a price
Okay.
to renew.
And typically these are upfront and loaded as in the first year for a majority of the cost, and then a second year, a smaller amount. One of the things that it was important, and I asked our team to go to this company to ask if we could split it up as much more as, throughout the process. And the reason for that is because of the way that it affects our annual operating budget. And so having this opportunity, which they typically don't extend, was attractive to us because we can spread that out over 3 years, and the impact on our operating budget is less in the first year.
And how often do we undertake curricula review? What's the typical cycle?
We do typically try to stay to a 6-year cycle.
Okay, great. So this would be up for review in any case at the end of 6 years.
Yes.
Perfect.
How does yearly cost for software versus textbooks compare?
Off the top of my head,
Sorry, that was just on the top of my head.
they bundle the program together, so the price is really adjusted based on the purchase of both.
I just wanted to add that, each of the different textbooks that we adopt have different types of programs. Many of the publishers today anticipate that you will need actually both online and paper. So it's very rare that you just have one or the other in today's market. They develop the programs that they're actually both that you will need. So we'll never fully divest ourselves of print materials or resources, and the online is usually meant to augment and support.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Allen, did you have any? Nothing, okay. One of the real treats for me was seeing teachers really excited about integrating this curriculum into their instruction. So I'm pleased with that. Mrs. Flanagan, this is a roll call vote.
Mr. Allen?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Balding?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Vacy?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Ms. Fraser, can you please read the recommendations for the proposed academic program changes?
Yes, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the academic program changes proposed for grades 6 to 12th, as reflected in addendum number 12.1, and authorizes the publishing of the Abington Middle School Program of Studies 2025 through 2026 for grades 6 through 8, and the Abington Senior High School Program of Studies, 2025-2026 for grades 9 through 12, as the official statements of the programs of study for grades 6 through 12. The board approves the courses listed with the understanding that scheduling of the courses is subject to sufficient enrollment and adequate budgetary provisions.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Once again, we saw our presentation during the orientation, and we can answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments from board members? No? Okay. All right, Mrs. Flanagan. It's another roll call vote.
Mr. Allen,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart,
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad,
Aye.
Ms. Spalding,
Aye.
Ms. Hartman,
Aye.
Ms. Frazier,
Aye.
Ms. Fazy,
Aye.
Dr. Mowry.
Aye. The ayes have it. The motion passes. Ms. Fraser, can you please read the recommendation for the confidential student matter?
Yes, it is recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the confidential student matter as reflected in addendum number 13.1.
Second.
Dr. Fetcher, we have a second.
Okay, the confidential student matter is in regard to an education service agreement. Keeping in mind the confidentiality of student matters, I can answer questions that you may have.
Questions? Okay, Mrs. Flanagan, please.
Mr. Allen,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart,
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad,
Aye.
Ms. Spalding,
Aye.
Ms. Hartman,
Aye.
Ms. Frazier,
Aye.
Ms. Fazy,
Aye.
Dr. Mowry.
Aye. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Dr. Fetcher, are there any additional reports and recommendations by the administration and the superintendent?
Yes, Dr. Mowry, I provide the conference attendance and professional leaves and the capital improvement projects report for your information.
Any comments or questions? No? Okay. Any other business that appropriately may be brought to the attention of the Board of School Directors? Okay, with that, we will move on to our final opportunity for comments from citizens. Comments are being conducted both in person and by phone. The phone number to participate in public comments is 267-715-3717 and is being displayed on the screen at this time. You will be able to join the meeting by calling in on your mobile or landline phone. If there's anyone present who would like to make a comment, please use the microphone either to your left or to your right. You may go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I do not have confidence in the tax calculator that you've presented to people. I think it is misleading. So I'm going to ask, why was the bond issue slated out to 40 years? Are you, as the board, really planning on taking 40 years to pay off this building? An average commercial roof lasts 20 to 30 years. An HVAC system lasts 20 to 30 years. So if you're doing that to try and artificially make the tax increase look lower, you should at least say that. The second one is, why 5 to 5.5%? And I'm just asking that because it doesn't seem to me like that's realistic. There may be some reason, but I'd love to have an explanation for it. In 2017, we gave bonds out at 5% in 2017. If we're giving them out now with the current situation, there's a 30% higher CPI rate now. The treasuries are much higher than they were in 2017. Then we got ripped off in 2017. So if the same board making those same decisions, like, wait a minute, in 2017, we shouldn't have had to pay 5%, or we're going to pay more than now. I'd like to ask those questions. I hope you all would consider it, because you're telling people that they're going to pay taxes at a lower rate than I believe they're going to. I still will stand by, you're voting on a $1,000 increase for the people who live in Ardsley per year on their taxes. And now it looks like it's going to be 40 years instead of 25. The next question is, can you explain to me, I think I know, would one of you please explain to me what does wraparound debt service mean? That's a highlight at the very top of the bond issue. This stuff ought to be explained if you're telling people this is what it's going to cost. If you're honest and you're confident, you have no problem with people making decisions based on real information. If you're trying to deceive them, then that needs to be known too. So the next thing is, I'll go on real quick, is we had a $50 million special fund that has been spent by the board already. 2 years ago, we were told by the administration, that there was $118 million, 461,913, pretty precise. That was how much improvements were needed in the middle school at that time, junior high school, whatever they're calling it at the time, I don't remember. We have a solid structure. Who was wrong? Was it the administration then, or these inflated costs right now to make renovation look like it's more expensive than it would be? I'll leave that right there. Thank you all for your time. But I do enjoy the virtue signaling about spending $300,000 of other people's money. It may be needed, but I just think it's comical.
Thank you for your voice.
Hi. I just, based on what he was just saying, again, this isn't you guys spending this money. You guys are coming up with a plan, presenting it to Abington residents, and we are voting on whether to go ahead with it or not. So it's not that you are spending this money or you are setting this number. You are presenting the options. It is being chosen, and then the voters get to vote on it. And I'm excited about the possibilities for what the school district will have in the future. And then there was also a comment made about why didn't the school district buy St. Basil's? And I'm not really sure of all the background on that, but it seems to me that building on land the school district already owns is better than buying land from the private school or the diocese. The other thing is the building at St. Basil's, from what I can tell, probably fits a quarter of the students that we have in our middle school. So not only would that be buying a school that is about as old as the building we have now, it would be having to then build a new building on that land we just bought, and then hoping there's enough room for fields, I guess. But once you build a building big enough for our students, parking for the students and the staff, and then trying to have some fields, I'm not really sure where the cost savings is there. So I am in favor of the plan of building on the land we already own and keeping all the kids on one campus to best utilize the fields, the facilities, the staff, et cetera. So thank you again.
Thank you for your voice. Mr. Green, has anyone phoned in to be recognized for public comment?
We have no callers online.
Okay. With that, we will move on to closing comments of school directors. At this time, are there closing? Oh, did I miss something? I'm sorry.
I just wanted to respond to.
I apologize.
No, that's all right. The dollar amount of $118 million that was presented, and they were, just so the public's aware, the comment was made, so I wanted to clarify.
Thank you.
What was stated and where it was stated. So that was in the facilities assessment review in orientation on May 24th, 2022. That's available on board docs. And then the facilities forum presentation, which was in June 29th, 2022. And both of those presentations had the same dollar amount. And the important thing to note about that dollar amount is it is for major systems, and it is not a entire total renovation, which would be starting at the $206 million budget, and as well as costs that have inflated over time. So I just want to be clear about that in terms of why those numbers were given and what it actually stands for and would mean, and that would be for just major systems in that building and not a renovation.
Thank you for that clarification. Anything else? Okay. Okay. With that, we will move on to closing comments from school directors. Mr. Allen.
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Brown.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Ms. Eisenhart.
Good night, all.
Mr. Mohammed.
Good night.
Ms. Spalding, I beg your pardon.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Ms. Hartman.
Take care.
Ms. Fraser.
Just a little something from my notes, a little homework assignment. I'd just like to share that an increase in property values will eventually offset the increase in our property taxes to pay for a new middle school. According to further research, for every dollar spent on public schools, home values can increase by $20. Have a good evening.
Ms. Fazy.
Take good care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for their time and attention and patience today. Have a good evening.